Hello, everybody, and welcome to Safari Mack Explores North America, where I'm your guide and host, helping you make connections to the wild. Well, everybody, here we are in Astoria, Oregon, where for two main reasons. One, I thought I'd share a little history. It was here that Lewis and Clark ended their expedition through North America with their famous cry of "Ocean in View," which at the time was their equivalent to what 150 years later would be us going to the moon. But there's another main reason. Here in Astoria, Oregon, there's a creature that we're going to meet that isn't really as commonly cited as other marine life. Today, we meet the wolves of the sea, the killer whale, or also known as orcas, and also known by their Latin name of Orcinus orca. But as always, if you're new to my channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Check out my Facebook page for special content. And if you have a question about animals, or if there's an animal you would like me to do in the future, just send me an email. But with that said, let's begin with their family and their evolution. Now, we've already met orcas before with our previous presentation of dolphins. So, dolphins part 1 and 2, but I would like to just give a special reminder from the previous that these creatures are also related to porpoises and other whales. So this family group is what you call the cetacean family. So, and I also included a special cetacean evolution episode that if you would like to take a look, all you gotta do is just check out in the link. Check it out with the links in the description below. But in that episode, you'll get to see how exactly they went from land-based animals to the creatures that we know as the masters of the sea. But let's take a look at the killer whale's evolution. So they were thought to have originated in the oceans around 15 million years ago, but would take on more of their modern day appearance roughly around 250,000 years ago. Now, let's talk about their habitat, lifestyle, and family life. For starters, the orcas that we're going to meet are what you call southern resident orcas, and they occupy parts of California, Oregon, Washington State, and all the way up into British Columbia. But in general, orcas are found basically throughout all of the Earth's oceans and seas. But now, I want to just share something very special with you. Now, we know despite occupying all the Earth's oceans and seas, believe it or not, they actually are they're not all the same. They all have different styles of life, they have different cultures, they are even what you call different ecotypes. Now, and it's not exactly the easiest to keep track of exactly what is what. As you can see by this picture, there are many different varieties. That's why, later today, I would like to invite you, my viewers, to check out a special episode about killer whale ecotypes and the different places that they live and how they live. And we'll explore different kinds, from transients to residents, even to offshore orcas. But for today, we're in the northern hemisphere, and we're focusing on a subspecies called the southern resident orca. So, orcas are, just like elephants, they are what I would like to think of as the defining creature of what it means to have a family. Because orcas live in family groups called pods. They are comprised of moms, grandmothers, aunts, sisters, brothers, uncles, cousins. But there's one member that they don't have in the same pod: the father. That's because they're all related to each other. There would be, if they were all breeding together, it would cause inbreeding. Therefore, instead, more often than not, their father is going to be coming from a different pod, and the calves will see their father, but usually when they come into contact with each other. So there they would meet up with each other, they would socialize, and they would talk, just like how we seem to do at special family get-togethers. But now, we'll get more into that a little bit later. Now, orca age is pretty difficult to kind of determine, but scientists do estimate that orcas are are able to live within the same lifespan as us humans, with males actually living a bit more shorter lives, while females can probably get into their 80s or so. In fact, there was one orca a long time ago, a southern resident orca, that was thought to be at one point the oldest orca ever known, recorded at a possible 100 years old. But this is really highly debatable. Her name was J2, or we called her Granny. But more often, the 80 seems to be like a more appropriate age for an orca to get, at least for the females. Now, orcas become ready to become mothers at around 20 years and usually will stop having babies at around 40 years of age. After a 15 to 18 month pregnancy, she'll give birth to a single calf and then will raise that calf along with help from the rest of the pod until around 5 years, to where then she's ready to become pregnant again. And I can tell you right now, orca pods, if it wasn't for them living together in groups, mom would have a really hard time just keeping her calf in check as well as keeping it fed. Because in orca pods, different ecotypes have different sizes. Southern resident orca pods usually tend to be smaller, but some pods in different parts of the world have been recorded to have almost 200 individual animals. Can you imagine having all those mouths to feed, or how much stress the matriarch has to keep all of her family in check? Speaking of keeping fed, let's talk about their hunting and their diet. Now, I've already told you how they occupy the Earth's oceans and seas, and being killer whales, they have a reputation of obviously killing many different forms of marine life. But not all orcas actually eat the same foods. We'll get into that a little later with today's special episode coming up around noon today. No, the southern resident orca lives on a strict diet of fish, from the Chinook or king salmon, chum salmon, coho salmon, and one of my personal favorites, sockeye salmon. But more often than not, 80%, nearly 78% of their diet will be the Chinook salmon. And honestly, with how big they get, it's not exactly a hard mystery to figure out why. I mean, you saw how big that was, right? Now, everybody has different hunting styles, but what orcas do is they have a special kind of adaptation called echolocation. That is where, using their melon, that's that kind of blob at the front, they send out a sound that goes out and then waits for its sound to come back, as that sound bounces off of different items, whether it's a sea stack or a bed of kelp or coral, or of course fish. Now, some scientists think that they're able to that because the fish I mentioned, they do eat that. Scientists actually think that with this echolocation, they can actually detect exactly the certain signature sounds that different kinds of salmon give off. But that one's a little hard for me to believe. Either way, it's easy to figure out that they use this to hunt for fish, and then they work together to kind of corral them, and even using their flukes, they flank out fish as a way of stunning them and then making their quick catch. Today we're going to end Killer Whale Part 1 with their influence in human cultures. More specifically, we're going to look at the Native American cultures. But first, I'd like to introduce you to someone a little special. This is a picture of the late actor August Schellenberg, who played a character named Randolph in the popular films Free Willy. He represented a Native American group called the Hyade people of British Columbia. These people devote their lives to the orcas. They are truly intertwined, as they believe that when people drowned, that because the ocean was their version of the underworld, the orcas were taking them to their kingdom to be turned into an orca forever. So their spirit lives intertwined with these majestic marine mammals. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I have for today. Be sure to join me next week for part 2, as well as noon for the ecotypes. But until then, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there.